starting a church from scratch, how do you get people involved in that?
These are the 3 ways that I think every church planner should be thinking about. That model just really attracted people who aren't churchy. We would speak to people about making a difference, them being uniquely made, that they could be known.
So you guys had over 500 people at your church on day one. How did that happen? What did you guys do for that?
So what I was doing was I messed around with a lot of different types of lead texts. What I landed on was I would say,
Chris Moore,
come on,
Valley Church, planted yesterday.
come on.
With 520 people?
Yes, sir.
How many salvations?
We had over 60.
Over 60. I was in the room. I thought it was at least 100.
You know what? That was a conservative number. Everyone was like, I don't know. We couldn't have counted. There were so many.
Yeah. You guys crushed it. God's already done so many things, and your church is technically 1 day old. And so I'm excited to have Chris on the pod today, guys, just to break down everything church planting. If you're maybe similar to him in that youth pastor seat and considering planting a church, I hope this podcast gives you value and some insights in behind the scenes in church planting. And so, Chris, tell me about the transition just from the beginning. Yeah. We were talking a little bit before we pressed record, going from youth pastor to church planter, and even having the church you were on staff at send you. What was that process like?
Yeah, well, first off, Brady, love you and ChurchCandy. I'm so honored to have worked with you guys in the last year. It was really a tremendous blessing and really helped us have that real strong launch. So if you're thinking about ChurchCandy, make sure you're planning for it. So about the church launch and everything, I was a youth pastor for almost 14 years, like career youth pastor. It was so funny. People on ads would be like, this guy gives off big youth pastor energy. And I was like, I got one gear. So, but I was on staff at an incredible church in the West Valley here in Phoenix for 8 years. And when I had the idea of church planning deep inside of me for so long, but it was just a dream. I never had the place, and I never had the location. I never had the time. And inviting my senior pastor into that journey with me not only confirmed it, but it also sent me. And so when I brought my senior pastor to this old church building that was not really a church, him and I were at this building, and he looked at me and he was like, bro, if we can buy this building, lease this building, or steal this building in Jesus' name, because there needs to be a good church right here. And so he was all in on us planting a church, and that was really a big piece to help send us and launch us, and really confirmed in us, like, this is where we're supposed to be. And so, yeah, like I said, we were there for 8 years, so we saw the fruit of serving another man's vision for a long period of time, and then got to see God doing a miraculous work yesterday.
Yeah. It sounds like he was more than just your boss. Like, he was you didn't say, my boss, I brought him on the conversation. You said, my pastor. Yeah. You brought him on the conversation. Yeah. So was that relationship very pastoral?
Absolutely. And I think part of it was just a high honor. Like, from the very moment we got there, it was like, if he asked for something to be done, it was like, I was quick to it. I was right on it. If he ever needed anything, I would just go over and above. If there was ever anything that needed to be done, I was like always there. Because I knew I was carrying another man's vision, and I knew if I could be trusted with another man's vision, God could give me mine someday. And so I just followed and served and honored him as best I could. And when it came time for us to be released, it was like my home church just got behind us. They did 2 years salary and benefits and really released us to plant the church, and for me not to worry about feeding my kids. So, yeah.
That's huge, man. That's huge. There's so many church planters that I know that would love to have that. And so that's a huge blessing that you guys have that, man.
Yeah, and I think like you and I were just saying it before, it's like that's the fruit of honor and serving and being in a place. And I think and it's not always possible, but when you can get rooted in a place that believes in you, and you can like find someone's vision to serve, you can see a lot of fruit from that in student ministry.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. So talk about the early days. How did you start recruiting your launch team, that initial core group of people?
Yeah. Well, first off, my senior pastor, my pastor Dan Steffen at Pure Heart, he's just like a big kingdom man. He's like, anybody you want from this church, you take them. He's like, no one's off limits. You can talk to anyone. Bless you. We planted about 20 minutes away. And because he said that, I was like, I'm not going to be slimy. I'm not going to go recruit and steal people. And so we really did a great prayer night, and we just asked people to come and pray over us and send us. And from that prayer night, we were like, okay, anybody who's willing to pray for us is people we want on our team. So from that night, we asked people if they would come to a party in our home. And then when we had 100 people in our home, we were like, oh shoot, like that's a church. So when we had the 100 people in our home, we realized like, okay, we need to find a venue. Like kids, like the other kids that were there were ripping our kids' curtains out of the wall, like the actual like studs, like the curtains are everywhere. Every room's destroyed. And we were like, we cannot do this in our home ever again. But it was like I said, man, it was like a dream in our hearts. We just didn't know when. And when it was so clear to us, like we looked around our neighborhood that we were living in, and over 10,000 people moved to a 1.5 mile dot in the heart of the city, and not a single new church. And not only is there not a single new church, but all the churches have bowed to culture, given up on the gospel, and have just really not really aren't churches. And I think that's another thing we need to look at when we look at our cities. It's like, are there churches? Yeah, there might be, but are there real Bible-believing, gospel-preaching, Spirit-empowered churches there? Because there needs to be one of those churches in that city, and maybe God would be calling you to it. And so, yeah, that was really the early on day. And so we started with the prayer night, and then startup parties.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so startup parties, and they were so great. I think the startup party model, it's really heavy influenced by like ARC, CMN. A lot of these guys encourage you to do these party models, and they're very relational, high vision. There's no preaching, there's no sermon, there's no worship. Our goal was to create an environment where people could meet non-weird Christians and for the first time be like, wow, these people aren't weird. Like I could actually do church with these people. My neighbor, it was so funny. I was talking to him. His name's Chris, and he's like, bro, when you told me you were doing these parties so that people could meet non-weird Christians, he's like, that made me laugh. He's like, and I realized, you're right. I only know weird Christians.
Yeah.
And he was like all in. He was so excited about our launch, and his wife had his baby on launch. And he literally texted me, and he was like, I'm going to be there next week. Like, we're going to be there as soon as possible. She had the baby today. Like, and so, but it was just so cool. That model just really attracted people who aren't churchy. And when we did the high vision, like, you know, maybe there's like, we would speak to people about making a difference, them being uniquely made, that they could be known, like that. Those were words that we really used in our startup party model. I also had like a vision pitch that I was like, I basically compared being like investing your money in your life into Apple. Like if you could go back and give money to Steve Jobs and you could go back to that moment, would you? And every person's like, yes, of course I would. Yeah. And then I was like, there's never been a greater startup than the local church. And we called our party startup parties because everyone in Central Phoenix is like, you know, tech, it's entrepreneurial. Yeah. So everyone knows what a startup is and everyone knows what a party is. So that language really resonated with our community.
Yeah. Explain in simple terms. Someone might be listening to this. They're not from the ARC and CNN background. They might not even know what a startup party is. Like, explain that so to give some more context.
Yeah. So there's not a wrong way to start a church. Anytime you want to start a church, like that's a great thing. Whether you're starting small, you're going to start with people in your living room, or you're going to launch large, like kind of like we did. You know, if you were to use just pure statistics, a church that starts under 250 people does not have there's not a high percentage chance that church will last long term. And that really, when you start getting into statistics, which isn't God, right? It's just, they're just numbers, but numbers tell us a great story. And so if your church can launch with over 250 people on their very first Sunday, there's over 90% viability of that church existing over 10 years. And so for us, we wanted to build a church our kids could go to someday. So we knew that the launch large model resonated with our souls because we wanted this church to exist forever. It's not that we wanted to lead a big church, not that we wanted to lead an influential church or have a platform. To us, it's like, we want a church to be here. Yeah. And so we resonated with the launch large model, which essentially is you take a longer period of time, you do a lot of fundraising, you do these interest parties, and these parties, what you do is you onboard people onto teams. So you're building teams. So basically for 9 months, you are just team building. You're onboarding people, you're training people, you're equipping people. And then essentially when your launch day comes, you launch with a big team and then a bigger sized church. And so then it speaks to the long-term viability of your church. So we really resonated with the model and with the startup party and launch large model.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So for those, how did you actually get people to the interest parties or startup parties?
Well, there are 3 ways, and I think that these are the 3 ways that I think every church planner should be thinking about. Number 1, you need a personal invite culture. Nothing beats like a personal friend inviting another friend. In fact, some of the like people who are day oneers for us were personal invitations.
Yeah.
They were like literally people that I invited from coffee shops. Like, don't ever take yourself out of the equation of being an inviter. Don't ever take your team out from being inviters, like investing in their friends. Like, you need a really good personal invitation culture. And the ice cream on top of a great personal invitation culture is great social media presence. Like, if you ever go into Valley Church Phoenix, we launched with over 3,200 followers on Instagram. We had over 1,300 followers on TikTok. We have over 1,300 followers on Facebook. So we launched with almost 6,000 followers on social media. And when you land on any of our pages, there's faces everywhere. We're like not graphic heavy. We want people to resonate with the spirit of our church, which is, it's just like everything looks and feels like a party. Everything is so exciting. And so our color scheme, every single thing we did was meant to be bright and in your face and exciting and life-giving. So social media is really big because when people land on your social media or your website, like they're starting to think through, like, is this a place I could go to? And the real sweet spot. So you get these things down, you have those things, those are really sweet. And the sweet, like the top end of the funnel, what really helped us at scale was running church ads. Church ads were so helpful for us. And I actually have, and I'm excited to put out like a more detailed resource in this because I have our ad spend for every party. I have our customer acquisition cost for every party. And then I even have our attendance for every party. And I can even tell you certain things I did along the journey that helped affect all those numbers. And so running church ads with ChurchCandy was so powerful for us. Like, we actually knew every single time we were going to have a party, we were going to have 100 guests at this party. So we were like, we knew going in what to expect, and then we knew what we were going to do. By the end, we had a really dialed in system internally to be able to manage that. Because a lot of churches, you gave them 100 guests today, they would not know what to do. And I'll be honest, we did not know what to do for a long time. But man, it was so awesome. Like, that was like the sweet spot. Having all 3 of those things together just worked for us. And so if you're doing interest parties, you're looking at doing those things, I would just be thinking about those things. Like, what are people seeing? What are we doing internally? And then how do we at scale fill this funnel?
Yeah, I love it, man. So the 3 things: personal invites,
yes,
good socials, and then actually putting money into those socials, into paid ads.
Yes.
Yeah. So with the first one, personal invites, in any church, in any business, your best customers typically are going to be referrals.
Yes.
Word of mouth. And like, even for us, whenever I connect with a church and they say, oh yeah, I talked with Chris Moore from Valley Church, right? Or someone else, another pastor that's working with us, those are typically our best clients.
Yeah.
Because they didn't just find us from an ad or whatever. They know someone that works. And so that works across businesses. That works across churches as well. Invite culture is huge. The socials, for those of you that don't know, he's not going to plug it. I'm going to plug it. Good and Faithful. You guys crush it. So Chris actually owns not a competitor to ChurchCandy. They work with churches doing more graphic design, creative. So if you want your socials to look fresh, hit up Chris, hit up Good and Faithful. They crush it there. And then for paid ads, what are things, so for those of you who don't know, we'll run ads on Facebook, Instagram, and invite people to the startup parties.
Yes.
And from there, they're able to RSVP. You get a notification with their name, email, and phone number. Yes. What was your process? Once you get a text or a notification on Church Funnels saying someone RSVP'd to an interest party, a startup party, what did you guys do there to take them from a lead to someone showing up to that party?
Well, first off, I think you undersold ChurchCandy a little bit, because every month I didn't have to worry about the 30 ads that were going to be run across all the platforms. It was like I could trust, like when I put in the request form, I could trust that all the ads were going to be put out, that they were going to be excellent, and that your team was going to do what we asked. And it was always great. it was like across all the platforms. I can't tell you the amount of people who are like, we just cannot get away from you. Obviously, it's God. Like,
right?
God, you're chasing us down.
I guess the Holy Spirit's called me to Valley Church because every time I turn around Instagram, I just keep seeing you.
Somebody literally said, they commented, if I see this ad one more time, I'm coming. And then we commented, see you tomorrow.
That's so funny.
It was so funny. But yeah, man, I mean, our process, it was ChurchCandy helped really make it simple on the ad side. And then there were little things we did along the way that were really cool. So like, you know, our target demographic, we're trying to reach like, they're like 25 to 35-year-olds. You know, they shop at Trader Joe's. They like fitness. They wear Lululemon. They own an iPhone. And so we were like, can we target iPhones only? And your team was like, yeah, we can do that. And so we started specifically targeting people with iPhones. If you have an Android, we love you. There's a church out there for you. It's just not Valley Church. I'm just kidding. But it's funny because some people get offended by that joke. But there are churches out there. And by the end, we were like, okay, now we're targeting everyone for our launch. But initially, we were like, we want to really be dialed in on our target demographic who we're trying to reach on socials. And so what we would do is somebody would sign up on social media, and then they would get dropped into church funnels. So then they would get an automated text. They would get an email from us with a registration link for our party. So we added an email, and then they would get texts the day before and the day of. Those are all automations. Like, it was so cool to know that I wasn't going to have to go and text 200 people and be like, hey, don't forget, tomorrow's this thing. Yeah. It was just like, I just knew that all the information was going to get to them, and that if I was going to reach out to them personally, I didn't have to communicate information. I just got to communicate heart. And so even on our ads, like, what I realized was there was a drop off of about it was about 10 seconds. People stopped watching ads. And then like a lot of times people, when they do ads, or when I started doing ads, I was like, hey, my name's Chris. I want to invite you to our startup party tomorrow at Central High School. And we're going to be doing this, blah, 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 blah. And then I changed it because I realized they're only watching a few seconds. Yeah. I'm just going to communicate heart. Because I know if they sign up, they're going to get all the details. I just need them to see us, catch our heart, and then get the details. So it was like I almost got to like shift who I got to be online in our ad strategy because of how the automation. So the automations were killer. They were amazing. And then we started targeting the iPhones. And a big part of it was our target demographic, but then also when you text someone from an iPhone and you have an iPhone, it sends a blue text message.
And they know, like, oh, this is a real person.
Yes.
On the end. Because as much as I love church funnels, it's all green bubbles.
Green bubbles.
Yeah.
And the iMessage thing's kind of next level. So what I was doing was I messed around with a lot of different types of lead texts. What I landed on was I would say, hey, is this, and I would say their name. Like, hey, is this John, ? My name's Chris. I'm the lead pastor at Valley Church. Wanted to let you know I just prayed for you. Hope you're having a great day. Let me know if you have any questions about our upcoming party. And then it would say, P.S., this is not a robot. This is my real cell phone. And then I would send them a selfie video where I would say, hey, John, I would say their name. And I would say, hey, John, I'm so glad you signed up for our startup party. We believe that you're going to be able to discover your people, your place, your purpose, and find out how you can make a difference at this brand new life-giving church. I can't wait to see you on August 4th at Central High, or, whatever the details were. I saved all the details for the very end. I wanted to make sure they knew I knew their name. I wanted to make sure that I knew that they were communicated to, and that they got to really catch our heart. And we had some insane people join our team, and a lot of people say things like, I had never gotten a text from a pastor before.
Yeah.
I had never had a pastor send me a video like that. And it just resonated with people because it's so different than, like, automations are great, but it just took that thing to the next level. We had a team too who was calling people. And so people would sign up, and we had like a host team. Like, we have like Valley Church, we also have we're like low-key a call center, I guess. Calling all our leads, just letting people know, like, hey, this is like, they would just call, ask them if they had any questions, tell them they could pre-register their kids, let them know we're praying for them. So there's certain things along the way that we did that really helped turn that show rate from 10% to 30. At a lot of our startup parties, we were 30-40% show rate, which was incredible. So yeah, and we had over 14. Let me say this: with ChurchCandy, we had over 1,400 people sign up to come, families sign up to come to our startup parties. 1,400. And over the last 9 months, we had over 700 people attend.
Dude, that is crazy. Like, the fact that a lot of these people literally went from, oh, I saw you on Instagram, to actually, like, taking their families and going somewhere. John Mulaney has a bit about, like, he, like, opens a stand-up special, and he's like, I'm so glad you joined me here, because as an adult, it's so easy not to go places. Like, it's so easy just to stay home and do nothing.
Yeah.
And the fact that people would leave their house to go to a startup party, to go to lunch Sunday. Like, it's, people think it's just easy. Like, oh, yeah, I'll invite people to church. They'll come to church. Like, dude, people don't want to leave their houses.
Nope.
So give an example of the videos that you would use in the ads. You said the first few seconds were like just showing your heart. So can you give an example of like what that looked like for your video ads?
Yeah. So, I mean, I love the whole strategy. It's like you want to break what looks normal on socials, right? Like people are seeing ads. And so when they see ads, they just swipe off. So you want it to not look like super addy. So it was always a selfie video. I was walking. I always tried to find like fun spots in Phoenix that really, how do I say it, just kind of like caught people's attention. So I was on parking garages and in like beautiful parts of the city and had these crazy backgrounds. And I would just say, hey Phoenix, my name's Chris. We're starting a new church here in Phoenix called Valley Church. And then I would talk about their people, their place, their purpose. And those were the big things that we landed on that our core demographic was looking for. Over 10,000 people moved to a 1.5 mile dot. They're all from somewhere else, and none of them have people. None of them have a place really to call home, and a lot of them, they didn't have purpose. And so that was some of the language we use. We stole that from like there's a few other ARC churches that have adopted that language now. And we really liked it because it really resonated with our community.
Are there any other creative strategies or things you guys did to build momentum going into launch?
Like as soon as we felt called to plant a church, we joined every Facebook group that existed.
Like in Phoenix?
In Phoenix. Like because I mean, a lot of times Facebook shows you the groups that are in your area. Yeah. So like I'm joining like, free stuff or fun stuff for kids in Phoenix. We're Phoenix Foodies, North Phoenix Living, Scottsdale, homes. We're joining every single Facebook group we could find. And then what I would do is I'd post my family picture. Like that first month, I would post my family picture. And I'd say we jumped out of our comfort zones. We risked everything to plant a new church in Phoenix. And almost every time we did it, we'd have over 30,000 views on my personal Facebook page.
Wow.
Like every single time. So I did it the first month, and then I did it like 4 months in, and then launch week I did it, and it was just a family portrait. It was so simple. Took us one time doing it. That portrait's everywhere. And then when I did it the week of, I posted it again in all of them, and I said, this week we are starting this church. But I had done it 2 times in the past, and people were like, oh, that's awesome. Lots of follows. We had people joining our team, people coming to our things from it. And then on launch week, it really that was probably the biggest thing I did on Facebook with my personal profile. Because when people see you and they see your kids and they see your wife and they see that you're taking a huge risk, it resonates with them emotionally and really connects them to your church. So like we had people even come yesterday who came from Facebook groups that we had posted in. I would have there was one that had over 400 likes on it in a Facebook group about us planting the church. And so that was a little thing we did personally that made us like the approachable version of our church online, because people don't always attach that my personal profile also reflects on my church profile. And so by having that little relational piece, it actually helped us bridge the gap. And then once again, when they start clicking on your stuff, they go to your websites, ChurchCandy, bro, they're not going to be able to escape.
Yeah. So for context, we set up all of our ads to where someone goes to valleychurch.com if they live within driving distance of the church, even if it's a little bit outside of Central Phoenix. Just for retargeting, we know that they are interested for whatever reason. Now they start seeing ads. It's like if you were to go to Amazon and look up one of these Shure podcast mics.
Yeah.
Then you go to Instagram, you start seeing ads for the mic. Same concept. I love it, man. I love it. So we were talking last night that being a pastor. At ChurchCandy, we have almost 30 employees that I'm managing. They have salaries, but I still have to manage them, right?
Yeah.
you guys, how many people did you have in your launch team?
It was about 150 on launch Sunday.
150 people on your launch team that are essentially volunteer employees of your church that you guys manage.
Yeah.
How did you transition from people like showing up to a startup party, to buying into the vision, to then getting them trained in teams and getting them bought in to like actually serving, and like how did you guys manage all that?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I think a lot of people, when they think about church planning, they think about preaching. And when I thought about church planning, I thought about team building. Because I knew if I could build the best team, that the sermon, when it came time for me to preach, the rooms would be full and that everything would be taken care of. A lot of people, like, their first thing when they, like I said, when they think about like the sermon series, they think about this, they think about the discipleship, they think about all that stuff. But to me, I'm like, we need to onboard people onto this team. We need bones to the spirit. Like, we need structure to what we believe God's going to do. And so that's why we would do no services. We would just do startup party and onboard people. So like for us, we had to make a big margin to onboard all these people. So if we get like our startup parties, we were getting like 50 leads at a party from people who want to join our team. I was like, 50 people want to join our team? So I would do the personal selfie video. I would say, hey, Chris, so glad you're on the team. They'd fill out a quick form, like what team they want to serve on. And then I would do a phone call with them, or someone on my team would meet with them. And I think that was really successful. We also hired someone else to join the team early, like kind of as an executive pastor, to help us meet with people, because I couldn't meet with all those people.
Yeah, even only so much time in a day.
Yeah, and I think that some people, like, I don't want to say this badly, but when you start church services, the minute you start church services is the minute you start feeling Here Comes Sunday, and that whole Here Comes Sunday actually can be counterproductive to building the structure of your church. And so that's why we made sure to have that long runway. That's how we onboarded people on the team, meeting with them, listening to them, spending time with them. And then what we would do from our startup party would be like, okay, so they would come to our party, and then the next party they would serve at.
Love it. So getting them bought in and serving as quickly as possible.
Love
it, man. Love it. Let's talk about the F word. Fundraising. You guys raised how much money?
Just over $700,000.
Man, that is crazy.
Yeah.
How are you not tempted to just be like, you know what, forget this, Connor, let's run to Mexico and take this? And no, I'm playing. Yeah. What did you guys do to fundraise?
Yeah, well, first off, I know this is one of the biggest pressures that a church planner feels, and not every person has the same story and opportunities that we had because of our sending church. That was a huge blessing for us. I'll say, man, I can tell you one story, and I think it's really cool, and I think it really set the tone for what God was going to do. So at one of the church planning events, they do a Shark Tank.
Oh, no.
And then it was actually, I was so nervous, bro, my legs were shaking. I preach like all the time, but I don't, like, my leg was literally shaking, and people were like, at the end of the Shark Tank picture, they were roasting me for like being shaking. But anyways, it's just a different environment. So if you win this Shark Tank event at this church planning, it was CMN. So at CMN, they have a Shark Tank pitch, and you have to give a 90-second pitch and ask for money for your church in front of everyone and a panel of church planners. So I get up there, and I'm like, 10,000 people moved to a 1.5 mile dot in the heart of the city, and we need a Bible-believing, gospel-preaching church. And I'm like, I'm asking for $50,000 for our new life-giving church coming to Phoenix. And would you make a visionary investment? I do my pitch. I get done. I was nervous, but I felt like I crushed it. I go and sit down, and then this guy who comes up after me, he's a great church planner, he planted in Minnesota. He goes up there, and he's up there with his wife. They practiced all night. It was like really like Shark Tank. Like, they're saying the words at the exact same time. They're doing the whole thing. And then he's like, would you help us plant a church to reach unchurched people who walked away from God, like my brother who's on the front row? And everyone starts crying because his brother, unsaved brother, got saved and is on his launch team. And everyone's like, I just was like, he cheated. Oh, like, man. It's not fair. Like, he just made all of us cry with his unsaved brother, who's now a Christian now. So I literally was like, okay, whatever, I lost. But I got $1,500 as a win for second place in that thing. And as I walked away, I felt like the Lord spoke to me, and I felt like the Lord said, give the winners all of your money and all of your earnings. It was over $3,000 in earnings and winnings. So it was like the package that we won. And I was like, that ain't God, that's pizza. And my wife, which, man, listen to your wife. If you don't, she was like, I sat down, I didn't say it to her, and she's like, I feel like we're supposed to give them all the money and everything we just won. I was like, no. Okay, Lord. Well, it's yours. It's all yours anyway. And we gave them all of our earnings and winnings. And I don't say this to make us proud or make us look like any type of way. I just want to be able to use this as an illustration. We gave away every single dollar that we had at that point. We had nothing up until that point. And when I got to the hotel that night, I felt like the Lord said he was going to bless us 100-fold for being generous when we had nothing.
Yeah.
And so literally I was like, okay. And I walked out to the living room. I was like, Connor, I felt like God said he was going to bless us 100-fold for that $1,500 blessing. And she's like, okay, Chris, that's crazy, dumb. You can pray for that, but you should not plan for it. And so, we do it, bro. 4 weeks later, a church that we had no connection with, no relationship with, nothing, not anything, called us to give us that exact amount of money.
Wow.
100-fold blessing. We couldn't have made that story up. I couldn't have written that. And when I think about it, I think about my church sending me. I think about honor. I think about like carrying someone else's vision. I think about like being faithful when God calls you to give, when God calls you to be faithful with small things. I think about that journey and I'm like, that's more than half of it. And then everything else was just meeting people, talking with them, and sharing the vision with them in a concise way. Like there was a time when a church was looking to give money, and I said, instead of asking them for a dollar amount, I gave them a vision. I said, hey, could you pay for all of our kids' ministry? And they don't ever give more than $30,000. And they paid for all of our kids' ministry, which was more than $30,000.
Wow.
And the reason why they did it is they said it was a project that we resonated with. And I think sometimes we ask for money, but sometimes we have to attach more vision to it too when we ask or when we meet with people. And that was another one. Also, if you're talking with someone and you're looking to get fundraise, if you're looking to raise support, don't ask for money, ask for advice. And it's like, it's like the pit bull phrase. Have you ever heard it? It's like, you ask for money, you get money once. You ask for advice, you get money twice. And so it's like, you got to ask for advice, like grow with people. And I wish I had actually done that a little bit more in the process. But yeah, we did. Yeah, God was really faithful with us. And he really moved and created a lot of opportunities for us.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk venues.
Yes.
Start with startup parties, and we'll talk about your launch venue.
Yes.
So where were some of the best places you guys did startup parties at?
Yeah, well, man, it's quite the journey to find a venue. Our house was not the vibe. We realized that really quickly. We were glad we did. And even last night, people were like, I remember being at your house. I'll never forget that day. And I'm like, okay. Like there was some value in it. But a lot of people, I would not suggest doing a home because a lot of people are like, I don't want to walk into some rando's house, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know if you would. It's like, do they have cats? I'm allergic to cats. Like, I'd have a lot of questions about going to someone's house. So we pivoted and we really looked at a couple venues. There was a venue actually that we were looking at using here in the Valley. It's beautiful. But when they found out we were a church, everything was all good until they found out we were a church. And then they said no. I was like, so it was a little harder than I thought it was going to be because we were like, okay, we want room for 100 people. We need room for kids, a separate space for kids because if parents aren't going to be able to hear your pitch, they're not going to be able to say yes or no. So you need to be able to have like kid space, a separate space for you to meet. So we found a co-working space. I was zooming in on towers in Midtown Phoenix. I was like, is there something there? No. Is there something there? No. That's how I found our venue, was zooming in on towers. And so we found one. It was awesome. And that would probably be one of my best advice. Co-working spaces were great.
Love it.
They like money.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, so what about your launch venue? You guys were in a high school. How did you guys land on that?
Yeah, well, we did a bunch of different spots. Like some people look at elementary schools, but there's usually no parking there because they're kids. Yeah. They get dropped off, so they don't need parking. And then the toilets are like this tall. And no grown man wants to go sit on a small toilet. So we looked at like an elementary school, but we're like, no parking, small toilets. Let's not do that. And then we looked at a middle school and we were like, it just wasn't a great fit. It was like a long walk and it was all spread out. And then we landed at Central High School and we were like, wow, this venue is like, there's not an auditorium like this in Central Phoenix. I mean, you were there yesterday. Yeah. It's 1,100 seats on the floor, 1,300 seats total, 400 parking spots. You were just like, okay, this is a sick venue. And so we got in there, we looked at it, and we were like, you know what? A high school has name recognition, it has place recognition. A lot of people know it. It's a historic place, great parking usually. If you can find a good auditorium, you can make it happen. And then we like transformed the lunchroom into a kids ministry. So yeah, we loved the high school. And I know people have done like movie theaters and other things like that. And I think it can get kind of tricky for kids space. We wanted to stay out of all teachers' classrooms. Like that's a big deal because teachers do not like it when you are in their classrooms and you mess things up, because there's a dynamic. And I don't know if you know this, but your school district gets the money for your rent, and the local school has to put up with you, and they get no money from it. So imagine having to give people your facility that gets messed up every week, and then you get nothing out of it. Yeah. So like this, it can create a weird dynamic with this school. So you just have to manage that relationship with your local school, which we're trying to do.
I love it
right now, day one.
I love it. So walk through, how did launch go? What were the wins? Were some things that you think could improve on? Let's talk through that.
Yeah, I mean, we were very happy with the number. Obviously, like 500 people in Central Phoenix is a move of God. Yeah. There's just like, there are a lot of new people who've moved there, but also like there hasn't been a real church plant like that in that area in a very, very long time. Like right there right where we are. So we knew that it was going to be hard ground to plant in, but I was so happy with it, man. I think the salvation number, like you said, it was a very conservative count to say 60. When you looked around that room, it was like people were saying it was half the room. Like it was. And
like, by the way, Chris is a phenomenal. I've never heard you preach before. This was his first time. And even my father-in-law, who's from El Salvador, doesn't speak the best English. And he's a Christian. Like he's got a crazy testimony of God, like freed him from alcoholism and stuff. But they're not super involved in any churches. And we brought them with us so they could watch our kids. Even my father-in-law like responded to the altar call, or not the altar call, but the response moment when he raised his hand to like rededicate his life to the Lord. And I'm like elbowing my wife, like, did you see Rafa like just raise his hand? And so I thought that was cool. Yeah. For me, just like, all right, God, this is cool that you're using ChurchCandy as a way for me to bring my in-laws to hear the gospel preached again and again and get them an excuse to get back in church. So just that one instance made me super happy. But there had to have been more than 60. I think it's too conservative.
I think it was too conservative. It was definitely over 100, but pastor numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was so great. We had over 80 cards from first-time guests.
It's huge.
So this week, you know what I'm doing? I'm doing selfie videos. I feel like I text for a living, Brady.
Yeah.
It's like I thought I signed up to just like read the Bible and preach the Bible, but man, it's so much about people.
People don't realize like church planting, the majority of it is just being on iMessage. And like I would be curious if you checked your phone screen time, how much is spent in just like your iMessage, just texting people.
I'm a professional texter. Yes. So I'm excited to do all the follow-up. We're doing baptisms this next week because a big reason why is we want people to be able to, be able to publicly declare their faith.
Yeah. And
then also you can kind of I think you can kind of ride the momentum of a launch when you can get newly saved people to bring their family and friends back. And so it's the comeback for us. It's that follow-up for us. It's a big deal. Like launch was great, but we're at church this week. So we got a church this Sunday. So we're going to look at getting them back through baptism, and we're looking at getting a whole new group of guests.
I love that. So that's really smart. I've heard of other churches, like we did a Friends and Family Day where we had food trucks and bounce houses the Sunday after lunch to get people back. But I like the idea of baptisms because, one, it's more spiritual than tacos and bounce houses. But two, people will go and bring their family. And they want to invite their friends whenever you get baptized. So that's
and I think like that. It's a nice momentum tag. It's like you just did this, let's do this. So we're excited about this weekend. We actually already had people signing up because they were getting ads, and then they would go to our website, look at all our stuff, and they're like, baptism. Yeah, they hadn't even come to a service, and there were people getting signed up for baptisms, which we're excited about. So.
That's so cool, man. It's awesome seeing fruit beyond just attendance, right? Because that's great too. Just having people in the room, they're hearing the gospel, they're getting connected, but you're seeing fruit of salvations.
Yes.
You're seeing people sign up for baptism. Just people filling out those cards, wanting to join a team. Like, that's a next step in their discipleship process. Connecting to a church, like giving them your info. Like, that's like, to us, it might not seem like that big of a deal, but like that is a huge next step. So I love that you guys are doing that. Any other advice for people considering church planting, or I don't want you to gatekeep anything.
I mean, there were a bunch of little things that I did that I thought were really fun.
Yeah,
like when like some little things. Like one of my hacks was I started a free Facebook group.
Yeah.
And it's called Free Stuff in Phoenix. And I just started it, and I started adding people through Facebook Marketplace. Because if you message someone directly on Facebook or Instagram and you're not their friends or followers, you go to their request.
Yeah, it goes in like the spam.
It goes to spam.
Yeah.
But if you put someone a message on Marketplace, you go directly to their inbox.
So you were like, hey, so you're selling this piano. By the way,
do you want to go
to our church? Like, what did you do?
So what I would do is I would dial in my circle, because Facebook Marketplace, you can make a tight circle of where you want to be. So what I would do is I put my circle right where I want it, right where we're planning the church. Like the mile radius thing, and then I would type in free, and then I would send them a message and be like, hey, and I had ChatGPT write it, so it was horrible, but it was like, hey, do you want to make a difference and make a sustainable society? And it was like the green eco emoji. It was like help us upcycle and make this city something beautiful again. It was just like, it was like make Arizona beautiful again. It was just so dumb. But I would send it to people like as a cold message, and I was going directly to their inboxes, and it was like a link to join the free Facebook group. Ding, 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 ding. And I just would do it just like, if I had 10, 20 minutes, I was just sitting down. I was like, okay, let me invite 10 people. And I would do it. And then it just, so like now I don't do it at all. And this morning I had 60 people in the last 24 hours join the Facebook group.
Wow.
So every day there are people joining. And this is one of the cool things about Facebook groups is you can do the @ sign.
Yeah.
And you can do @everyone.
Yeah, that's why I left your Youth Pastor Roundtable group. I think I told you that.
Because the @everyone.
Yeah.
But so we have over 16,000 people in Phoenix that are that are in this group that I can send a message to all of them. And so I'll be honest, some people are like, why does pastor posting this thing and @ing everyone? This had nothing to do with free stuff. And I would just be like, it's a free event.
It's free. Yeah.
I ain't charging you nothing.
I'm an admin. I can use.
And I'm also like,
app privilege.
Also you're in my group, so
don't like it. There's the door.
So that was funny. I also think that people would go to our website or click our other stuff and then get retargeted by ChurchCandy. So it would just put them into the whole cycle. And so it was part of our strategy.
Hold on, I want to simplify that and make sure people understand.
Yes.
So kind of the funnel is, you hit up people, cold DMs through Facebook Marketplace that are trying to get rid of free things, right?
Yes.
You create a group, the group isn't for the church. The group is
unbranded.
It's, hey, like, make Arizona
green again,
right? It's just like a buy and sell giveaway group, right, for the city.
Yep.
And then because you started it, you have the admin privileges to be able to say @everyone whenever you have events. So I'm sure later this fall, if you guys, or Arizona, Phoenix, you already did back to school, but whatever it might be, Halloween, something, some kind of event, you could @everyone
exactly
to get them. And so the goal is, in which this is church planting, business, whatever, it's attention is scarce.
Yes.
And so you guys are leveraging Facebook groups to like playing it. That's so smart, man.
Yeah, it was
so smart.
It was a little sneaky, the whole but now, because Facebook is a search engine too. People are typing in free stuff, so we're coming up, and there were already lots of free stuff in Phoenix groups.
Yeah,
I was like, but there's room for more.
Yeah,
and so there's always room for more. And the personal reach outs helped us start the group, get it going, and now every day it's on autopilot.
I love it. It's so in the marketing world, you'd call that black hat. Like a black hat strategy.
Yeah.
So like this is a black hat strategy for marketing for church planters. Bro, I love it.
Yeah,
I love
it's funny. That one cracked me up. I loved that one. Another thing we did, and we got into some TikTok stuff. Like TikTok was really good. We had some good customer acquisition on TikTok. You just got to be a little careful because it's unhinged. Like everyone on TikTok says the quiet thing out loud. So just be careful on TikTok. But you could get some good.
Is that block button, baby? The block button. You just like.
I love the block button. It feels so good.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, hey, the last thing, I want to talk about coaching and how important that is, and there's tons of church planting groups. What were some that you are involved with or that you would recommend people get connected with?
Yeah, I mean, you got to find your tribe. And it's so important to know like what the church you're called, the church that God's put inside of you, what that church looks like. Because if you were to be like, hey, I'm starting my church in my living room tomorrow, then like a lot of these church planting networks might not be the right vibe for you. There are so many. There are, I basically applied to all of them, and I started process with like, I think it was like 8 or 9. Like one of the church planting networks is like, your church is like the NASCAR of church plants. Got 1 million stickers on the car, like you're America's church plant. And I was like, well, I just saw that we were better together. And if I can work with these people and they're strong in discipleship and these guys are strong in marketing and these people are strong in storytelling, to me it was like I just knew I was going to have multiple partners. And so for us, like, Church Multiplication Network was really awesome. I loved working with the Assemblies of God. They were huge partners for us. They rallied behind us. Vision Arizona and Converge, that was a local one that is a national, like they're like Cool Baptists now. And so so working with Converge was great. And then ARC was awesome too. Actually, I think ARC has their model. And if you resonate with like the Launch Large model, their coaching and their system really helped pull it out of us. Also love the Coaching and Strategic Launch Network. Those are ones, and they do the most amount of funding. And so if you can get in, they only pick like 10 churches a year. So there were like a bunch of these networks that I worked with. I did a call with Stadia. I liked Stadia. It just wasn't a great timing for us. What's the other one? It's a Christian church one. It's escaping my brain, but there's some great ones out there. And I would just look, and if you need anything, like I'll be in your corner. I can help cheer you on. I want to be able to, like for me, a long-term dream is to help youth pastors who have a call in their heart to plant a church to do it. And that's why when I talked with Brady early on in this process, I was like, I want to help church planters be able to see the dream in them, to have a church that exists for their kids. And I would love for ChurchCandy to partner with us. And so you guys came around us. You guys believed in us too. This was a partnership. And I can't say enough how grateful I am for the partnership, how grateful I am for ChurchCandy, because I really believe we have a play. And if you could run this play with this amount of dollars, if you can raise this money, if you can work with ChurchCandy, if you can dial in your systems, if you can dial in this stuff, I believe our results are replicatable almost anywhere. If you can follow the steps, if you can get the right coaching, get in the right networks, and have the right people around you like ChurchCandy, I think you can see the same thing we saw happen for you.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think a big part of that goes back to the beginning of our conversation of having your heart in the right place. If you are a youth pastor, serving in that ministry.
Yes.
Right. Having your heart in the right place, because I really believe that you and Connor just have the hand of God on you, and something special. And something special happened yesterday in Phoenix, and that's just the beginning, man.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see what God is going to continue to do through you and Valley Church for generations. What is it? Generations and generations to come. So I love it, man. I love it. Well, that'll do it. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, you can hit me up on @8more on Instagram. You can meet me on Facebook, Chris Moore. You can join Free Stuff in Phoenix Facebook group. You can also see our personal business at Good and Faithful Studio. We do unlimited graphics and video and social media management, which would be a great way to pair with ChurchCandy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. And before we go, Chris, I have a gift for you.
Oh, no way.
Are you a big hat guy?
I love hats.
Do you? I don't know if
yes,
I've ever...
I do.
Oh, you're wearing, I'm just messing with you. You're always wearing a hat. He preached in a beanie.
I did.
So I have this custom Building the Kingdom
Let's
ChurchCandy hat.
Come on.
I want to give you.
Let's go.
So for those of you watching at home, we have 500 of these that we're giving away. If you pre-order or order my book, Launch Big, it is all about church planting. Even if you don't care about church planting, but you would want the hat.
Come on.
I'll get it to you. I also have an additional course that goes along with the book. You can go to launchbigbook.com, pre-order the book, or if the book's already out, if we still have hats, just show that you ordered the book on Amazon. We'll send you that hat.
Boom.
Completely free, no catch. And Chris, you were the only person other than my immediate family and ChurchCandy team members to get one of those hats. So there you go, man.
Thank you so much, bro. Do it. Get the book.
Awesome. Have a good one.